Habits are the invisible architecture of our daily lives. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, much of what we do is shaped not by conscious choice, but by automatic routines that have become deeply embedded in our brains. We brush our teeth without thinking. We reach for our phones without noticing. We drink coffee at certain hours. We check notifications. We pace while talking. We bite nails. We scroll endlessly. And we repeat patterns again and again. These automatic behaviors save us energy, but they also trap us in cycles we sometimes wish to escape. Habits can be our greatest allies when they align with our goals, or our worst enemies when they lead us away from health, productivity, and growth. Understanding how habits form in the brain is the key to unlocking change, and learning how to break bad ones while building good ones is one of the most important psychological skills we can ever master. To understand habits, we need to step inside the brain. Habits are rooted in a structure called the basal ganglia, a cluster of nuclei deep inside the brain that helps us learn routines, patterns, and automatic actions. Whenever we repeat a behavior in a certain context, the brain begins to encode that pattern. It turns conscious effort into automatic execution so that the mind is free to focus on other tasks. This process is called chunking. Imagine learning to drive a car. At first, every movement requires attention, adjusting mirrors, checking pedals, shifting gears, steering, watching the road. But after months of repetition, these actions become bundled together into a habit. You drive without consciously thinking about each step. This is the power of the habit system. It automates behavior so the brain can conserve energy. Every habit follows a loop: cue, routine, and reward. The cue is the trigger that tells the brain to initiate a behavior. It could be a time of day, a location, an emotional state, or even the sight of another person acting in a certain way. The routine is the behavior itself, the action we take in response to the cue. The reward is the positive outcome or relief the brain receives from performing the routine, whether it's pleasure, comfort, stress relief, or achievement. Over time, the brain begins to anticipate the reward as soon as the cue appears, and this anticipation drives the craving that keeps the habit alive. This loop can create both positive habits, like exercising when we feel stressed, and negative ones, like smoking when we feel anxious. One reason bad habits are so hard to break is that they are not simply behaviors. They are deeply encoded neural pathways reinforced by dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. When a cue appears, dopamine surges in anticipation of the reward, compelling us toward the behavior. Even before the reward arrives, the brain has already learned to crave it. That is why habits can feel almost impossible to resist. A smoker who sees a cigarette pack doesn't just remember the act of smoking. They feel a craving triggered by years of dopamine reinforcement. A person addicted to scrolling on their phone doesn't just like using the device. Their brain has learned to release dopamine every time a notification appears. The neural pathway becomes like a well-worn trail through the forest. The more we walk it, the deeper it gets, and the easier it becomes to travel down it again and again. So how do we break these pathways? The truth is, habits never completely disappear. Once a neural pattern is encoded, it can remain dormant for years, waiting to be reactivated. But what we can do is weaken old habits and strengthen new ones until the brain prefers the alternative. The process of breaking a habit begins with awareness. Many of our routines happen unconsciously. We snack without realizing, check our phones without noticing, or interrupt people without thinking. To change a habit, we must first observe it, identify the cue that triggers it, and become aware of the reward it provides. Without this awareness, the habit loop remains invisible and unchangeable. Once we become aware, the key is not to eliminate the habit, but to replace it. Habits are stubborn because the brain craves the reward. If we try to cut a habit cold without providing an alternative path, the craving remains unsatisfied and often drives us back to the same behavior. This is why people who try to stop drinking coffee suddenly often experience headaches, irritability, and a desperate urge to go back. A more effective method is to replace the old routine with a new one that delivers a similar reward. For example, instead of smoking when stressed, one might learn to take deep breaths, chew gum, or go for a short walk. The cue remains the same. The craving for relief is the same, but the routine is replaced with something healthier. Here, over time, the brain learns to expect the new reward, and the old habit loses its strength. Another important principle in habit change is the role of environment. Habits are heavily tied to context. We are more likely to perform a behavior in the environment where we learned it. If you always eat chips while watching TV on the couch itself becomes a cue. If you always scroll on your phone in bed, your bed becomes a trigger. Changing habits often requires changing the environment to disrupt cues. Removing temptations, creating friction for bad habits, and making good habits easier are powerful tools. For instance, if you want to stop eating junk food, don't keep it in the house. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to read more, place books within easy reach. By shaping the environment, you shape the brain's automatic responses. Psychologists also emphasize the power of small steps. Many people fail at habit change because they aim too big, too fast. They decide to quit sugar entirely, start running every morning, meditate an hour a day, and change their entire life overnight. The brain resists such drastic change, and willpower quickly burns out. Instead, successful habit building relies on tiny steps, repeated consistently. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, calls this the power of small gains. If you improve just 1% each day, the compound effect over time becomes extraordinary. The brain builds habits through repetition, not intensity. Doing 5 push-ups every day may feel trivial, but once it becomes automatic, it is far easier to expand into 20 or 50 push-ups. Starting with 1 minute of meditation daily is easier to sustain than aiming for an hour. Small habits, done consistently, create the foundation for big change. The role of identity is another crucial piece. Many people try to change habits by focusing only on behavior. I want to stop smoking. I want to eat healthier. I want to be more productive. But habits stick best when they are tied to identity. I am not a smoker. I am a healthy eater. I am a disciplined person. When we shift from doing to being, habits become a reflection of who we are, not just what we want. Each small habit we perform is a vote for the person we want to become. Futse. Skipping the cigarette is not just resisting temptation, it is evidence that we are a non-smoker. Choosing the apple over the chips is not just a dietary choice, it is evidence that we are someone who values health. By reinforcing identity, habits become self-sustaining. Breaking bad habits also requires understanding the emotional needs they fulfill. Many habits are coping mechanisms. Overeating may soothe anxiety. Procrastination may protect against fear of failure. Nail biting may reduce tension. Social media scrolling may escape boredom or loneliness. If we only try to eliminate the behavior without addressing the underlying emotion, the brain will seek another outlet. The key is to ask, what need is this habit serving, and how can I meet that need in a healthier way? If procrastination helps avoid fear, perhaps breaking work into tiny steps can reduce that fear. If social media soothes loneliness, perhaps reaching out to a friend or joining a community can serve the same need in a more fulfilling way. By understanding the deeper role of habits, we can create solutions that stick. Willpower alone is rarely enough. Studies in psychology show that willpower is like a muscle. It can be strong in the moment, but it gets fatigued with overuse. People who rely only on self-control often fail because they are constantly battling cravings and temptations. The more effective approach is to design systems and environments that reduce reliance on willpower. This is why habits are sometimes called the compound interest of self-improvement. Systems shape behavior more reliably than motivation. If you want to save money, automate savings. If you want to exercise, schedule it into your calendar as a non-negotiable event. If you want to eat healthier, prep meals in advance. By relying on structure rather than sheer will, habits become sustainable. Neuroscience also shows that repetition is the mother of habit. The brain forms stronger connections through consistent practice. Every time we repeat an action, the neurons involved fire together. And as the saying goes, neurons that fire together wire together. Over time, the pathway becomes stronger and the action becomes more automatic. The flip side is that when we stop repeating an action, the pathway weakens. This is why persistence matters more than perfection. Missing one day does not ruin a habit. What matters is the overall pattern. The more consistently we repeat a behavior, the faster it becomes a natural part of our lives. Freinamai. It is also important to celebrate progress. The brain thrives on rewards, and small celebrations reinforce habits. When we acknowledge even tiny victories, like finishing a workout or resisting a craving, the brain releases dopamine, which makes us more likely to repeat the behavior. Showier. Positive reinforcement builds momentum, while self-criticism often leads to discouragement and relapse. Instead of beating ourselves up for slip-ups, we should focus on the progress we've made and keep moving forward. Progress is rarely linear, and setbacks are part of the process. What matters is persistence, not perfection. Social influence plays a powerful role in habit formation. We are heavily shaped by the behaviors of those around us. If we spend time with people who value fitness, we are more likely to exercise. If we surround ourselves with people who read, we are more likely to read. If we live among people who smoke, drink excessively, or procrastinate, we are more likely to do the same. Psychologists call this social contagion. To build better habits, it helps to surround ourselves with communities, groups, or even role models who embody the behaviors we want to adopt. Accountability partners, support groups, or simply having friends with healthy habits can dramatically increase success. Technology can both help and harm habits. On one hand, digital devices are designed to capture attention and reinforce addictive behaviors. Social media apps, games, and notifications exploit the brain's dopamine system to keep us hooked. On the other hand, technology can also support positive habits. Habit tracking apps, reminders, and online communities can provide accountability, reinforcement, and structure. The challenge is to use technology deliberately, rather than letting it use us. Sleep, stress, and overall health also play a role. When we are tired, stressed, or mentally drained, the brain defaults to old habits because self-control is weaker. This is why people often relapse into bad habits late at night, after work, or during stressful periods. Taking care of sleep, nutrition, and stress management strengthens the brain's ability to resist temptation and stick to new routines. Good habits thrive in a healthy body and mind. Breaking bad habits and building good ones is ultimately about rewiring the brain. The brain. It is not a one-time effort, but a lifelong practice. It requires patience, persistence, and compassion for ourselves. The brain is plastic, meaning it can change throughout life. No matter how old we are or how long we've had a habit, change is possible. The key is to understand the habit loop. Identify cues and rewards, replace routines, design supportive environments, take small steps, tie habits to identity, address emotional needs, and surround ourselves with positive influences. Imagine a life where your habits work for you instead of against you, where exercise, reading, healthy eating, productivity, and meaningful connection happen naturally, without constant struggle, where bad habits lose their grip, replaced by routines that align with your values and goals. This is not about being perfect. It is about designing a life that reflects the best version of yourself, one small habit at a time. Each choice, each repetition, each act of awareness shapes the brain, builds identity, and creates the future. Habits are not destiny, but they are powerful predictors of it. The brain may cling to old patterns, but it is also capable of transformation. By breaking bad habits and building good ones, we harness the very structure of the mind to create lasting change. It is one of the most practical, empowering applications of psychology, the science of shaping ourselves through the small, repeated actions of daily life. And in the end, it is not just about habits. It is about freedom, the freedom to live intentionally, to rise above automatic behavior, and to choose the life we truly want.